of Sukkot at all. Just random.
I've never thought about that.
Huh, yeah, that's interesting.
Really fascinating.
Never thought about that, but yeah, you could probably draw some parallels there.
Well, if you think about the Feast of Sukkot being like the wedding chamber, and that would be a place of safety within a relationship with him, and so was the ark. It was a place of following directions and safety.
Doesn't it talk about happening in the 10th month too? In the
Yeah,
tropical?
it says it happened in the second new moon, the 7th day of the new moon. So 600 years, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second new moon, so it would have been the spring, the 7th day of the new moon.
Okay.
Yeah, they were on the ark for I think almost a year, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the timeline doesn't really, but yeah, there'd be some overlap too, potentially, because the Sukkot is a memorial of the Israelites being in the wilderness, which is why the temporary dwellings are an aspect of it. And so, yeah, you could probably draw some connections between, being on that ark and being in the wilderness, because they certainly weren't home. They were, wandering, so to speak, until they entered the promised land, if you will, which is just the earth.
It was the first RV.
Which it ceased to be.
No, it was a hard
So-
RV.
Yeah, I've never-
Very recreational.
Yeah, I've never thought about it, but yeah,
House
they're,
boat, first house boat.
I'm sure there's some parallels.
Houseboat.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, too, like if you think about it, also like the flood, I mean, it's almost kind of like a mikvah too.
Yes, it is.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I'll have some comments on that in
Okay.
this next chapter too. But yeah, it's very much like that.
All right, let's get this going. I got a pot roast in the crock pot at home. So, chapter 8, here we go, after the flood. And God remembered Noah, every living thing, and all the animals that were with him in the box. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters decreased. So this is the One You Man version, and it says box instead of ark. So
it's like a barge, if you think about the.
mine's probably the right one. Verse 2, it says, the fountains also in the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heavens were restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. And it was at the end of the 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent out a raven which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. He then sent out a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned to him in the box. For the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and brought her into him in, I'm just going to say ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which did not return again to him anymore. And it was in the 601st year, in the first month of the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the box, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. And God spoke to Noah, saying, go forth from the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives with you. Bring forth with you every living thing that is with you, of all flesh, of fowl, of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, so that they can breed abundantly on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah, his sons, his sons' wives went out with him, every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatever creeps upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the box. Noah built an altar to the Lord He took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I shall not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is bad from his youth. Neither will I again any longer strike everything living as I have done while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night will not cease.
I have a question. Going to chapter 13, verse 13, by the first day of the first month of the 601st year. Could you clarify that? I mean,
Noah's 601st year.
Yeah.
Noah's?
It was
Yeah,
601st
Noah was
year.
601 years old.
Oh, okay, so, all right.
Yeah, because Noah was
I'm
600
like-
when the flood started.
All right, yeah, because it doesn't say Noah's 601st year, so I was a
Yeah, his
little
birthday on the boat.
confused, and so thank you
Yep.
for clarifying.
Noah's birthday on the barge.
Worst birthday party ever.
Ever.
Birthday in the
I
box.
was sure they were shooting fireworks off the barge.
There's some really good
That would definitely be an
evidence
inside
of
joke.
the Ark itself in Turkey, and several years ago they actually built a park around it. All kind of information on YouTube, flyovers, drones, and everything else to see this. This is really neat. So if anybody ever questioned, like, oh, it never existed, like, how do you get that
They
big
have
gigantic
evidence of
ship
it
up
there
on
in
that mountain?
Turkey, yeah.
That's really, really weird. You know, for a long time, people, oh, that never happened. Well, there's evidence of it.
Well,
And people could go visit now. That's out there.
Well, and not only that, but almost every nation or type
Culture.
of people, culture, thank you,
Yes.
of people has a flood story. Yeah, so,
Right.
you know, so where did that come from if it never happened?
Yeah.
Probably came from a flood experience,
Yeah.
I had to guess.
Big flood, yes.
So one thing I wanted to touch on is in verse 1. It says, God made a wind blow over the earth and the waters subsided. So this is part of one of my favorite patterns that repeats throughout Scripture. So the word for wind in Hebrew is ruach,
Yep.
which is also the word that's translated spirit, depending on which place it's translated, you'll see either wind or spirit. So when God's creating something new or saving someone, this is a pattern of this ruach blowing over water. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, it says, the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters.
Yeah,
Right? That's right before he
we
says, let
just
there
read
be
that
light.
today, remember?
In Exodus 14:21, before the Red Sea is split, God causes an east wind, that's another ruach, blow over it before that is split, and he saves his people. And then there's another interesting thing. So later on, we have this story about this dove being sent out of the ark. Well, in Matthew 3:16, when Yeshua is being baptized, the Spirit of God, that would be a ruach, like a dove descended upon him. So it's this recurring theme of the ruach blowing over the water to create this new beginning or create this new paradigm.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of times it's tied to salvation or to a new creature, a new creation. And so anyway, I just wanted to point that out because that's one of my favorite patterns in the Scripture that you see over and over.
And they all happen in a mikveh too.
And yes, and that ties to water baptism as well,
Yeah.
because that's what that's symbolizing is. There's lots of things baptism is symbolizing, but one of those things is this new beginning,
Right.
and it's the pattern of creation itself. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
It is.
Oh, nothing.
There's when I started writing out the scripture last year, and when I got to this part, I was, the word curse, like, popped out at me. And so I looked at curse, and it's interesting that when everything happened in the garden, God cursed the ground.
Yep.
So the Hasitam was cursed, that he would crawl lower than all of the other livestock, right? He was on his belly, so that was a curse. And then the ground was cursed. And then the ground was cursed. Cain was cursed through the ground. But there's something to the ground being cursed. And so when he says that I'll never again curse the ground because of you, like, do you ever feel like you're cursed? Because I don't think that's a thing. Like, there are consequences and stuff, but God's not, I don't think God curses us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I don't, not that anybody would, but I'm just saying, like, from the perspective of, I guess, let me put it a different way. He disciplines those he loves.
Right.
He doesn't curse those that he loves. He disciplines those that he loves.
Absolutely.
So I thought that, even here it says, I will never again curse the ground on account of man. It's interesting, right?
We saw weeds.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, we do still have weeds.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good
but
for
a
the
lot of
ground.
things that we account for weeds are not really weeds, and we just don't know how to
And
use
they're
them right.
helpful.
That's right. That's good.
The curse, in a sense, or the consequence was that we would still work, but we would have to toil for our food now.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Instead of it just.
now it's like
Yeah.
fighting you, in a
Yeah.
sense, the ground is. And then the other interesting thing to this whole passage, while the earth remains, so is the earth remaining right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And I always look at that seed time and harvest. So it's really super easy to look at the world and be like, ugh, it's so bad. What's the point of doing anything? Have you ever had that thought?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Harvest will
But
not
he's
cease.
literally saying seed time and harvest. Well, who plants seeds? We do. Who harvests? We do. So it's an encouragement to go about life, still do good, still pursue righteousness or holiness. Still move forward. If it's business, if it's your life, if it's relationships, whatever it is, still move forward with it.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Good.
Still do good.
I've actually been thinking about this for years now, actually, but essentially,
best way to condense it down is all hardship is merely a test of character.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yes.
It is your response to it that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just look at the book of Job.
Yeah.
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 I mean, again, a lot of bad stuff happened to Job, and he still decided to continue to walk with God, even though he questioned why. But it's okay to ask why,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But he still refused to curse God. He continued, even though he didn't understand why what was happening to him. He continued to bless God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's good.
So I just want to say the word for cursed in
Kalal.
Genesis 8 is kalal.
Kalal, yeah.
The word for cursed back in Genesis 3 is arur. It is not the same
What
word.
does the one in Genesis say? Or what's the translation?
It's translated curse. So the NIV is my side reading with the Hebrew here, and it says curse in the NIV for both. So I don't know enough about the Hebrew words to know what the nuances for the difference are, but they're two different words. It's not actually the same word.
Okay.
What was the second one in Genesis 3?
This is the first time that kalal is used?
Yeah.
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 What are the
Means
references? What, Genesis 3?
So Genesis
3:14.
3:14, and then it's also in 17.
The one kalal kind of means dishonor, if I'm correct, if I
There it is.
remember.
Yeah.
It's Aleph, Resh, Vav, Resh.
I
In
can't get to it
Genesis
on
3.
the one.
Oh, I can look that one up.
To be made a curse. Harar.
I'm just pointing out the word
Yeah.
is different, so
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference in meaning is.
Well,
Yeah.
when Russ and Rebecca were here, they were talking about the difference between iniquity and a curse. Like, the iniquity that can be passed down, but if you actually do it, then the curse comes. I thought that was interesting. So maybe it's that the people, you make the choice when it's cursed, and he made the choice when he did the land. God did that. But if we make the choice, then maybe that's the difference in the kind of curses. Just from what Scripture's saying.
Well, the Hebrew arar is the primitive root to execrate, whatever that means, but to literally curse or to. So yeah, it's almost like it sounds accusatory in that sense. But the other one was to bring it to contempt. The Kanan.
Yeah, that would require some exegetical study to figure out what's going on there. But
And it wouldn't surprise me when he says that I will never curse the ground again. And he's talking about, and if you look at it as being some sort of bring to contempt, he's continuing on that sentence saying the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. I mean, that's contemptible, isn't it?
yeah. The sense could also be that he's not going to just totally destroy it like he had just done.
And
Because
can you spell the second person?
Which one? The one in
The
Genesis 3 was Aleph, Resh, Vav, Resh. And then this one was Kof, Lamed, Lamed. So in here it has two curse in verse 21. So it has a Lamed in front of it, which means two. So it has Lamed, Kof, Lamed, Lamed.
Does it have a transliteration?
It says two curse under mine. It doesn't have the.
Well, I was going to look it up in the Strong's, but
I am looking at it. That's why
Like
I
this
looked at
is,
the
I think kalal is the root.
Yeah.
Kalal is the root, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
K-A-L-A-L.
This is lit kalel. Like if you look at the.
yeah, I don't think we're going to figure this out in the next 2 minutes.
We're not?
But I want to jump back to Herbert's point about the purpose of trials, because the scriptures actually explicitly back up what he said. In James chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And so James says that the reason that we as believers go through trials is to build us up, not to tear us down.
Right.
And so, yeah, that gets back to what Matt's saying, that we're not cursed. But this is for believers. Point that out. Noah made it through the flood. So for Noah, this was a trial.
Yeah.
For the wicked, it was a curse.
Yeah.
For the wicked,
judgment.
it was a judgment. It was a destruction. This was not for their benefit, so to speak.
Yeah.
Curse is kind of almost living in judgment, right? I mean, a judgment is sort of has a finality to it, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah. So Galatians 3:13 says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it's written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a pole. Of course, I'm just reading this one scripture, but if you look in Galatians 3, let's see, it says, through your example of faith and all nations will be blessed. And so the blessing of Abraham, faith is now our blessing too. But if you rely on the works of keeping the law for salvation purposes, you live under the law's curse. Or there it is written, there it is clearly written. Literally cursed is everyone who falls into practice every detail and requirement that is written in the law. So if they're relying on the law for salvation, then that's another example of what the Bible says is being cursed.
Right. If you don't have faith with that. Faith. Yeah. By faith.
So that's kind of interesting.
All right, bring the heat, Mark. What you got?
Yeah. So this curse of the law actually explicitly defines what that is. So in Deuteronomy 28, verse 15, it says, "But if you do not obey the Lord your God to observe faithfully all his commandments and laws, which I enjoin upon you this day, all these curses shall come upon you and take effect."
Yep.
And the rest of Deuteronomy 28, if you're familiar with that chapter, goes on and on about all the horrible, horrible things that are going to befall Israel over the coming generations because of their disobedience.
Right.
In fact, Israel did go through all these things.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was because of their disobedience.
Yeah.
So when Yeshua redeems us from that curse, he's redeeming Israel from that curse of that disobedience, and they can go back to the land. Part of the curse is they're going to be expelled.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to be out of the land. They're going to be slaves in foreign countries. They're going to serve gods of wood and stone that neither they nor their fathers have known. They're going to be lost. But by redeeming that, by doing away with that curse, they can come back. They can serve God again.
Right.
They can be righteous again, and they will not be under this curse anymore.
And that's truly a cycle that we see, like on a macro scale, but we also kind of see that in our own lives on a micro scale too. Like,
Yeah.
it's because it's God's character, you know. It's his character to redeem.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, Herb?
Any other comments, questions?
Well,
I love God.
I was going to comment on when you said the seed time. I thought that was good. I always think of 2 Peter 3 when I think of that, because it tells us very explicitly that we know things are coming. Well, basically, this is going to be all burned up. But he says, what do you do in the meantime? You continue doing what you're supposed to do each day, basically is what it's saying. I'm just paraphrasing it, but 2 Peter 3 made me think of that when you said that. We just continue doing whatever up to the day that it happens.
Yeah.
We're just continuing to do those things, loving others, and it's got the list of things here.
And it's funny too, he doesn't say, and business will continue and all these things. It's like, goes back to agriculture, which teaches us so much.
Yeah.
And our sustenance and our growth kind of comes from, well, think about this. Seed time and harvest is related to the ground.
Yeah.
And if the ground was cursed or whatever, it'd be hard, right? But he's pointing us back to the earth in a sense of how we live it, because it teaches us. So next week we're gonna meet at Brent's farm, and I'm just kidding.
We have a farm?
Used to.
Yeah, we used to have a farm. Maybe we can meet at Levi's farm.
Yeah, Levi, that's
Levi, you got a farm, don't you?
E-I-E-I-O.
Or 9, sorry.
Okay.
And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you will be upon every beast of the earth and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moves upon the earth and upon all the fishes of the sea. They are delivered into your hand. Every moving thing that lives will be food for you. Even as the green herb, I have given you everything. But you will not eat flesh with its life, which is in its blood. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast I shall require it. And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother, I shall require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man will his blood be shed. For he made man in the image of God. And you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply in it. And God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, and behold, I am establishing my covenant with you and with your seed after you. I am. And with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl of the cattle and of every beast of the earth will you, from all that go out of the box out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will confirm my covenant with you, neither with all flesh, but be cut off any more by the waters of the flood. Nor will there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I am giving between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I have set my rainbow in the cloud, and it will be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it will be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow will be seen in the cloud. And I shall remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters will no longer become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow will be in the cloud, and I shall look upon it, so I can remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah who went out from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Kanan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and the whole earth was overspread by them. And Noah began to be a man of the soil, a farmer, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunk. And he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Kanan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward. And they did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew that what his younger son had done to him. And he said, cursed be Kanan, a servant of servants will he be to his brothers. And he said, blessed be the Lord, God of Shem, and Kanan will be his servant. God will enlarge Japheth, and he will dwell in the tents of Shem, and Kanan will be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years.
Going back to the rainbow, how beautiful that was. And I saw one just the other day, and it was the biggest rainbow I ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
It was absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
But you think of that, and you see what our adversary has taken something beautiful and reversed it.
Yeah.
And now if someone would happen to see a rainbow or the flag or something like that, it's totally 100% different, opposite of what was and it was in the scriptures and what it's supposed to be intended for. So that's sad, is to see that. And if you ask, a kid, oh, you see this rainbow, what does that represent? They will probably tell you of what the organization is, not really what it originally was stand for, of the agreement, that God has made with man of not to destroy the entire earth with flood or water. Has nations been washed out before with floods and hurricanes and everything else? Yes, it has, but not the entire earth.
Right.
Okay. Question number 2 is about the garment in which Ham has taken.
Can I comment on the rainbow? Yeah. Before you, just a real quick. You also have to remember that the rainbow in the flag is made of pigments, okay? And the rainbow in the sky is made of hues, okay? When you combine pigments, you get muddy black yuck, okay? When you combine hues, you get beautiful white light, okay?
Right.
Which is,
Gets
represents
spirits,
God.
too.
Yeah, so Hasatan didn't steal a thing. Not a thing.
That's right. That's right.
Just,
Amen.
that's all I wanted to say.
Imitated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, looking at the book of Jasher, take it or leave it, whatever else, it did mention something about the garments that Ham has taken from his father, Noah. According to the scriptures in Jasher, the garments in which was actually possessed by Noah came from Methuselah. Okay? And when the drunken state in which Noah was, he took it and actually held it on and actually gave it to his son, who was eventually the leader of Babylon.
Nimrod.
Nimrod got those garments.
That's what it
So
says.
that's what it said. I'm going to take it or leave it. I don't know, but it's a story.
But uncovering his nakedness doesn't have anything to do with stealing some clothes. Uncovering a nakedness has to do with sexual acts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's talking about the
Well, it don't say that in there, but here, you explain to it.
I got it.
You can do it better than I.
I got it right here. Yeah.
So this is, so Genesis here is it's using euphemisms really well to, to not be explicit about what happened. But this phrase, saw the nakedness of his father, is used elsewhere in Scripture.
Yeah.
And in Leviticus 18, verse 7. So all of Leviticus 18 is about basically immoral sexual behavior, most of which is incest in this particular chapter. And verse 7 says, your father's nakedness, that is the nakedness of your mother, you shall not uncover. She is your mother, you shall not uncover her nakedness. Verse 8, do not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is the nakedness of your father. And it goes on and it describes all of these illicit sexual relations, and it describes it as uncovering their nakedness. So, based on that, probably what happened here is that Ham slept with his mother.
Oh, yeah.
And there's various ideas about why Noah cursed Kanan. One possibility is that Kanan was the child that was born of that union.
Wow. Yeah, Kanan was a child born of the union.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that explicitly,
Right.
but that's one potential reason.
incest between Ham and his mom.
Yeah. Now, there's other possibilities, like Ham did something with his actual father, but given that nakedness of his father in Leviticus 18, it says that's referring to his wife, that's probably what was going on there.
Right, and it was Kanan that was cursed and not Ham.
Yeah. There's also a cultural element to that. In the story of, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's David and his son who rebelled, Absalom. I think that Absalom sleeps with his father's concubines, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
In public.
Right. Why does he do it in public? It's because
he declares himself the king.
Right, it's a cultural thing.
Wow.
He's usurping his father's position by sleeping with his wife.
Right.
And so that's what Ham's doing here. It's not just a sexual act, it's also this declarative act that I'm the head of the family now.
I mean, that's straight from Hasutan's playbook, in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, so it's not just deviancy, although it is deviancy. But this is a cultural declaration of usurping the authority of his father. And so that it's pretty gross.
Is that where the monarchies later on in Western Europe started getting that whole thing where if the king and queen gets married, that all the people have to watch them just to make sure whatever.
I suspect they were probably just weird.
Yeah.
It seems gross. Like, did that come up?
Yeah, I don't know. There's all kinds of depravity that.
So what would
Reading that.
the meaning be of the other two sons that walked backwards?
It could mean a number of things. One would be that they did not acknowledge that Ham had taken the position,
Right.
that they stood with their father instead, and did not. But yeah, because Ham brags about this afterwards, right? But Shem and Japheth cover it up, and so. But yeah, I think I'm not sure exactly what that means, but this is all laden with euphemism, and I think the saw the nakedness and that being directly connected to, things that you would describe in much more explicit terms, indicates that this is all kind of a polite way of telling us what happened.
Right, because it's not a sin to see your dad naked, right? I mean,
no.
in the literal sense. In the literal sense.
No. I don't recommend it, but no.
No need to go there.
Well, also, here's another.
You take care of him,
Here's another example of every time pork is talked about in the Bible, it's in a negative sense. Ham.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
That's why we don't eat ham today. Hey, Shem on you. Ham was the same.
All right. Anybody else?
Hamlet, oh what a
I accept. His chapter is full of all kinds of names,
can I-
so somebody else can read his.
What, can I ask something real quick?
Pass it on to
Can
us.
I ask something real
That's the
quick?
luck of the draw. That's the luck of the draw.
Yeah,
Vicky,
and someone
come
that's
on.
very comfortable with all of the,
I don't
names.
care.
All-
Just
gonna make it up.
Well, I was just gonna ask you.
I'm just gonna make it up as I go.
Is this, well, I got a real quick question. Is this one that I've heard of, Noah, what do you call,
Noahide?
Where like they were able to eat meat now? Is that where this comes from? Like before they only ate vegetables?
Yeah, we actually talked about that.
That's-
Actually, before we
yeah.
got here, Noahide laws.
Noahide laws, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Is that where this, like, changes or takes place or
No, that
starts?
happened in the 1200s.
Well,
Because they could now.
But this is, that's what they're pointing back to, though.
Okay, is this,
So whatever happened in
Well,
12,
yeah, okay.
they're pointing back to this part.
Using that
she's
as a-
talking
this
about,
verse 3, every
Yeah.
living thing.
yeah, she's talking about
Right.
the dietary changes, which it doesn't have anything to do with milk.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't have anything to do with dietary changes. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but yeah, that is a question, is this the first time that people are eating meat? Because it says, I've given you every creature now.
Right.
I
But
don't think we know.
but
I don't
what's not
think so,
mentioned is
but-
that it's a given that it only means the clean stuff, because, because if
Oh,
Noah would have
yeah,
said, great,
right.
let's have a barbecue.
Oh,
and
right.
Then the pigs would have been extinct before
Well, that's
they
what I
did,
meant.
but,
It was clean meat.
Right,
But
it was
before, I don't
clean.
think they even ate meat, did they? Didn't
No.
they just
They
eat
may
vegetables?
have, we don't know.
It doesn't explicitly say.
Oh, really?
You can, well, it can be implied from this verse that this is the first time, but it doesn't explicitly say.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
nothing.
I
Oh.
personally
nothing
don't
indicated.
think this is when
So
they
they could
started
have
eating
eaten
meat,
meat
but
before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no proof either.
Okay.
I mean, the first animal was slaughtered to cover up Adam and Eve, and so, but we don't know and sacrifices were made already.
Right.
About that, because of
We don't know
But they brought fruit. The fruit was sacrificed.
Cain and Abel, what was
Well,
that supposed to
we'll
bring?
find out on the other side.
Yeah, it's okay. I thought that was no high laws or something, but, okay.
Do you want me to read it, Kevin?
That's good, that answered that.
And it may not be really important when we get over there.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious
don't care.
if that's what that meant.
All right, chapter 10.
I'll tell you.
Because of Abel.
Here is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japhet, sons who were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japhet were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tuval, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Togarmah. The sons of Yavan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the islands of the nations were divided into their lands, each according to its language, according to their families in their nations. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Kanan. The sons of Cush were Siva, Havilah, and Savta, Ramah, and Savtkah. The sons of Ramah were Sheva and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod, who was the first powerful ruler on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Adonai. This is why people say, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Adonai. I have to laugh there, sorry. Bugs Bunny gets in my head. Just dated myself, I know. His kingdom began with Bavel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Ashur went out from that land and built Nineveh and the city Rehovot, Kalach, and Resin between Nineveh and Kalach. That one is the great city. Mitzrayim fathered the Ludim and the Anamim and the Lahavim and the Naphtuhim, the Patruzim and the Kashluhim, from whom came the Plishtim and the Kaphtorim. Kanan fathered Zidon, his first, Het and Yevusi and Emery and Gergashi, the Hivi, the Arki, and the Sini, the Arvadi and the Tzmari and the Hamati. Afterwards, the families of the Kanani were dispersed. The border of the Kanani was from Zidon as you go toward Gerar to Azah, as you go toward Sidon, Amorah, Admah, Tzvoyim, and Lashah. These were the descendants of Ham, according to their families, and languages and the lands and in their nations. Children were also born to Shem, ancestor of the descendants of Eber, an older brother of Yafet. The sons of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, Hul, Geter, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shalach, and Shalach fathered Eber. And to Eber were born two sons. One was given the name Peleg, division, because during his time the earth was divided. His brother's name was Yoktan. Yoktan fathered Almadad, Shalav, Hatzar, they put it right in the middle. Hatzar-Mavet, Yerach, Hadoram, Uzal, and Dikla. Oval, Ivamael, and Sheba. Ophir, Havilah, and Yovav. All these were the sons of Yoktan. Their territory stretched from Mesha as you go toward Sephar to the mountain in the east. These were the descendants of Shem according to their families and languages in their lands and in their nations. These were the families of the sons of Noah according to their generations in their generations. From these nations of the earth were divided up after the flood.
Well done, well done.
I hope I didn't make it.
Wow.
Oh, I think only you could have done it so well.
Yes.
Maybe Mark.
I gave it.
How about Mark?
Yeah, that's true.
So one thing to kind of draw out of all this, all these foreign names. So it talks about Nimrod, and it says the beginning of his kingdom was Bavel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So we know where that is.
What verse were you in?
This is verse 10. So that is where Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon, later would be sort of centralized, is in that region. That's kind of the Iraq region.
Yep.
And then the other side, from that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-Ir, Calah, Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That's on the western side. That's like kind of the Turkey area. And that's where the Assyrian Empire would later have its base. And then it describes, it doesn't say Nimrod ruled over this, but it describes, Kathy's translation says Mitzrayim, which is the Hebrew, but that's Egypt, which is the south. Those three kingdoms were always fighting for control of like the region. And at various times, the Assyrian Empire rose up and became like, just dominated the whole area. They took the house of Israel captive. And then the Babylonian Empire displaced them and took basically, during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, and they took the Judeans captive. And so, for Nimrod to control both of those regions is a big deal, because usually those two areas are fighting for control. So Nimrod was a big deal to have control over all of that area, because that was just the seat of power in the whole region.
And they're still fighting.
And it hasn't stopped.
They've never stopped fighting over there. But a little different culture now than it was then. Although some would argue not terribly different.
And they were, to go back to your previous point, they're fighting for power, which is what Ham, that was the curse that Kanan sort of
One thing
came from.
that's kind of interesting here
That's a good point.
is that it doesn't take long after the flood for things to go back to the way they were before the flood.
Right.
Because that's what was happening before too. And now it's got the same thing. So, but he's not going to flood the whole place this time. Or God's not going to flood the whole place this time.
So that happened to so many people.
Jinx,
But they create so many people so quickly.
Well, Nimrod.
Exactly the same time.
Nimrod doesn't come until, he's the grandson of Ham. So there wouldn't have been too many people at this time.
There's no birth control back then.
sword.
Well, and not only that, it only tells you the names of some of the people. It doesn't tell you the names of all of the people that were born to these people.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, there is a there's a theory about some of these genealogies that they give you the most significant people,
Right.
not every
Oh,
single
yeah, yeah.
person that was
Right.
born.
That makes sense, because there's not a lot, that long a time span, there would have, only a couple kids.
Yeah, no, there would have been a lot of people in
Yeah,
a few
they probably had
generations.
like 7 or 8.
Nothing like we think of a lot of people being today. To Terry's point, the population of St. Louis probably dwarfs, the total number of people in the world at this time. But it's still significant enough that there's political struggles taking place.
Right.
Yeah, if you're looking at the timelines, it's probably maybe 200, 400 years going by. Somewhere around, that's a couple hundred years off, but you gotta remember they still lived long.
Well, about
Not quite to the 600 years.
my calculation right, is 3 generations.
That's 153 years.
This
Yeah.
one says 153-year time span.
Okay,
That's what this one says.
that would be about,
Yeah.
right, I'm just looking at it, trying to do by.
2
So-
generations.
You can have a lot of, you figure, yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot.
you can have a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're still feeling the effects of that.
Yep.
Yep.
Because we're all related to one of these groups somewhere.
We're all related somehow.
Yeah, these are
I saw
our
the word
great
Ashkenaz.
great
I'm Shem, I'm just saying.
The Sephardi Jews and the Ashkenaz.
Right.
Yeah.
What's up,
I'll
cuz?
plan.
Anybody else?
Bring it home, Mark.
All right.
I know
Going
he wants to talk about giants now,
to
right?
chapter 11.
Brisket's waiting.
There is some.
Chapter 11.
I'll go ahead and read chapter 11.
We're gonna take chapter 11.
That's the whole chapter.
Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Bavel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years and had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Aver. And Shelah lived after he fathered Aver 403 years and had other sons and daughters. When Aver had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Aver lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. And Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. And Reu lived after he fathered Serug 207 years and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. And Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. And Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Avram, Nahor, and Haran.
So he had triplets?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Or maybe he had 3 wives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I had heard that it was triplets.
Could be. No reason it can't be.
I also heard that Nahor means snore.
I never looked at that. Could be.
The way I look at things is kind of, the Tower of Babel is a type and style of a new world order of that time. As is a type and style of a new world order of that time. We've seen what happened. The father was not happy and virtually changed everyone's language for them. They would not do what they were planning to do. Today, in our life, the new world order is alive and well. With the use of a computer, cell phone, the internet has recreated a lot of this information going from any language to another language virtually instantly. I'm just looking at it just right now. It says the United Arab Emirates is building a synagogue and it's an interfaith type of building which is supposed to house both a mosque, a church, and a synagogue all together. It's going to be opened up next year. Okay. You can see also the summit that's happening in the United Nations coming here in November 1, where the Pope actually supposed to speak in front of the United Nations on a climate crisis. Okay? He's trying to bring a lot of this stuff together to, again, to create a new type of a new world order. So we need to be opening our eyes to find out what is that and how will it affect us. Anyone?
Well, about the Tower of Babel, I mean, the Tower of Babel is also a very proudful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, let us show how powerful and we are, and how glorious we are to make this thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of their intent also to set themselves up as a kind of a god? You know, kind of like what humans are trying to do now, and play God, if you will. And so history is just repeating itself. It's always doing.
Yeah, I was reminded when Glenn was talking about that was, I don't know if anybody remembers this or not, but when 9/11 happened, President Bush gave a speech somewhere or something like that, and Jonathan Kahn talks about this. That he quoted a scripture out about Isaiah that basically, at the time, God brought the Israel, crushed them because of their disobedience. That they said, we're going to cut stone from a hewn stone and rebuild our, we're going to make ourselves stronger. And they're basically doing it in defiance of God.
That was actually Tom Daschle.
Oh, okay, somebody else, right?
Jonathan said it too. I heard it.
But
and
it's
so,
in his book.
like America too, we think we are it, right? And even I think in kind of in the Christian world too, with Bible prophecy, we think we're the number one place where everything's going to happen. Like we're everything and we're not, and just kind of like what Terry was talking about too, is that we think we're strong, right? We think we're the best, right? And look what's happening with our economy. Look what's happening with all the stuff that within a second it could just all fall down.
So let's build a really big church and get a name for it. No, I'm just joking. But what I have learned in contrast, I'm going to skip ahead because I will forget maybe next week to say something. Contrast that with Abraham, who was called by the Lord but never built his own city. He dwelled in tents, and what he built, when you see the story of Abraham, is he built altars. He didn't build a city for his name. He could have. I mean, he totally could have, but he didn't. He dwelt in tents, and he waited on the Lord to build something, and he built altars.
And you know what it says?
Come on.
Very
humble.
Yeah.
And actually follow that. Who added? God added servants. God increased. God increased the land. God increased the children. God, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of along that same line. Basically, God's saying, "Hey, they're becoming one people." But then Yeshua said, in his prayer, he said, "Let them be one, just as you and I are one."
sense
So
of
what's the
Holy
difference?
Spirit.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is the difference? I just,
Ruach.
Oh,
Humility.
The direction.
may they be at one as you and I are one.
I would be the direction in which, the Father and Son wants to take it one way and the righteous way, where man wants to take it and gather people and go that direction.
Right.
The direction was different.
Well, and it's kind of the difference between pride and humility.
Yeah.
Man wants to do it, and the man wants to be one in pride.
yeah.
Look how great we are.
Yeah.
And man in unity with God is humble, and look how great Abba
Yes.
is.
Pointing to
So in
Abba.
Ephesians 4, Paul says, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to look it up then, huh?
In Ephesians 4, that reminds me of this verse, so. Oh, here it is. I call upon you, therefore, I, the prisoner of the Master, to walk worthy of the calling which you were called. It talks about, with all humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another in love, and being eager to guard the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, one body, one Spirit. And so I think that's what that is the embodiment of what Yeshua said, be one. It's being one in humility and meekness, bearing with one another in patience and love.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, when you talk about how they were all as one, when it talks about when they were all as one, he's saying here, behold, they are one people. They all have the same language. And I looked at that word language in the concordance, and it is Sefeth. It has to do with, by analogy or margin, a band, a border, a binding, your speech and your talk. So it's more than just what we think of as language being what dialect do you speak.
Culture.
It's also what culture
Yeah.
are you.
yeah, true.
And also when you think about it, you also,
When you say high school.
and I think about what's happening now, the same language we're speaking is a lot. If you want to get literal as far as dialect, it has more to do with whether you're speaking English or if that's going to be the common world language or not. It has what language is being used to bring all this together. Binary. I mean, it's mathematical language. When you think, that's a language, and we don't think about it being that way. But it also becomes a culture, and when you see this happening and taking place, humanity in cultures is becoming more and more dehumanized. And I'm thinking that's starting to what's making us become more as chattel, more into that. I mean, I'm watching this whole transhuman thing. It hasn't. It's not all about morality. It's the language. It's binding. It's totally, I don't know, to me, I just see all that stuff and I thought, wow, that's what's happening.
But the international language right now is English.
It
Almost
is in
every
that
country,
dialectally.
Yeah, and they have to learn English. That's why it's so easy to go around from other country to other country and to tour, and they have multiple languages, but almost every single one is in English. And I understand that all pilots have to learn English. But international pilots have to learn English.
Better start learning Chinese.
Yeah, but I think we can look at it another
way.
When we start thinking about not being part of that, we need to be learning our own culture and our own language. We're curious now about the Hebrew part of it. What is the Hebraic thought, the Hebraic thinking, the culture, the things that we're now wanting to take on? It's like we're having to separate ourselves out and start.
Right, yeah.
In terms of building the city and whatnot, like Terry, you were saying, it was kind of a self-serving thing. Let me ask this question. What do you think is the most important part of the human body? Like, what can't you live without?
Heart.
Okay, let's start with the heart. Let's start with the heart. What does the heart do?
Pumps blood.
It delivers nutrients to every other part of the body.
Right.
What's the next most important part?
I would say the most important is actually the brain.
The brain. What does the brain do?
it makes you think. You could have.
Or not.
Mine doesn't do anything.
You could have an artificial heart. You can't necessarily have an artificial brain to be done. You can have artificial lungs. You can
And
put
that's,
on the
and that's what I'm saying. What does the brain do? The brain serves the entire body. And if the brain stops, you're done. Right?
Yep.
So those are the most important things. How do we build this body?
Heart.
It's built on the principles of servanthood.
Right.
You know, and compare that with whether you want to, you know, the city or the Tower of Babel. You want to compare it with that, or you know, any other church empire or whatever you know. Think about it. We can do something different here. We can be different.
Amen.
We are
Provide
better.
nutrients.
So Mark, as the brain, is going to deliver all the nutrients to all of us.
Mark the brain. Jacob.
Well, you just said the two most important
Ladies first.
came up were heart and head, and I thought, well, yes, yeah, the head and the heart. It's not enough to just have the head knowledge, but you have to have the heart knowledge. They're both. They both have to coexist. And because there's a lot of people that know a lot of information, and
Right, you don't have the heart.
they don't have the heart. And then some people are just running around led by their heart, and they have no head knowledge.
Right.
They're both very important.
And I heard somebody say just yesterday, they said, what is it? It's the 18 inches to get something from your head.
yeah.
But then they said the next hardest part,
That's good.
head to heart to
To
hands,
hands, to
and
do
actually
something.
do something
Do
with it.
something.
Right.
Wow, that's good. Yeah.
I was abandoned my original analogy because I realized I didn't realize where I was going. I realized I didn't know where I was going with it. But adding on to this, it's
Bring your mic closer.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
There you go.
adding. I abandoned my original analogy because I realized I didn't know where I was going with it. But adding on to what she said, there's another thing that's been on my mind a lot, is that passion without the reason is just aimless. It's like
There you go.
That's good. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Like you may have all the good intentions, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're just gonna you're a ball in a china shop. You're just wreaking havoc everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You may think you're doing something good because you have the best of intentions.
No, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy.
Well, yeah, but what do you do about that? I hear that all the time. I hate to bring like a little bit of weirdness into the.
I embrace weird.
But yeah, that's great. So you know, if you intend, like I don't know, we're intending to live the life as the body. I don't like that phrase because then you're like, okay, what's the solution to that? You know, intend to do evil? No. You gather some sort of information and that piggybacks off what he's saying. You know, of people that intend to see. I don't know. I'm just a person that makes a lot of mistakes, and so my life, my hells have been paved with good intentions too, and I really feel that that's a passion thing for me. But you know, like, and these people were trying to become one. I don't know. I think that there must have been some sort of well, they were coming up against God, right? It's not like they're becoming one so that they can be one. It didn't seem like that. It seems more that like they were raising arms against the King of Heaven.
Probably.
But you know, I don't know. That got
and it was probably built on slavery. Like even the tower is probably built on a slavery system as opposed to, hey, we're just all in this. Let's all carry a stone up here.
Right.
No.
Yeah, fair enough. You know.
Well, that goes back to that curse of Kanan, that you will be a servant, because likely that curse came from somebody trying to be higher up, well, from Ham trying to be higher up in power, and then that's what the Tower of Babel is all over again. The whole, we want to be higher up in power, we want to climb up to the heavens to be like God, basically.
And Yeshua made himself low and washed our feet and
That is a fight
pulled us
against
up
our
out of the,
nature.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Golly,
Right.
That's a fight against our nature,
Oh,
all
yeah.
of us, to
We
ruin
humble.
it.
what an
Which
goes
incredible
all the way
Savior
back
we
to the
have.
garden.
Become servant-minded,
When,
that's
when,
so hard.
when the fruit was eaten, okay, it was put in our nature to all, well, actually before then, because she saw that it was good and it would make her as knowledgeable as God. So there's that nature to want to be smart like God. I want to be this, and I want to be that, and I want to be powerful and stuff. And it all comes back down to pride.
Yeah.
And that's what it all comes down to. And Yeshua teaches the absolute antithesis of that, which is humility. If you want to be first in the kingdom, you have to be humble. You have to be a servant. Okay? If you're not going to make it if you go, it's all about me and what I can get. It's just, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Is that part of the fight that we're having in our culture now? The whole victim mentality,
Oh,
the
yeah.
victim powers. It's
Well, a lot of people
victimhood to be
take, right,
powerful.
because they think that that's a power
Gotta
over
give 'em
somebody,
power,
you know,
yeah, to give
I'm a victim, so therefore you have to give to me, since I'm a
Right.
victim, therefore I have power over you.
There's another angle
Yeah.
of power.
Yeah, it's politically useful is what
Yeah.
it
That's
is.
all it is, is politics.
And, yeah, and so to go back to what Matt was saying, and so, and yeah, I think you just hit it right on the head with because when you look at the examples of biblical kings, which ones were good, which ones were bad, the ideal king is a servant. And Yeshua just absolutely lives that out. And there's a lot there, because they expected him to come as a conquering king, but he came as a suffering servant. But that he had to be that to be the king. He couldn't be a king any other way. Now he will come back as what we think,
As the
in conquest, the conquesting
The
king.
Lion of Judah.
Yeah.
What he conquested was death.
But yes, well, yeah.
So in a way, he is still a
Yeah,
conquering
yeah,
king.
there's still a part of that to be done, but
Yeah.
yes,
Well, the
yes.
conquering king was a mistake for them, right? Like it was a failed perspective on the Israelite part, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and there's all kinds of historical reasons for that. But yeah, I think I think that whole element of self-serving versus being a servant is a big part of it.
If I say to myself, I wonder how I can help Mark today, are you going to be more inclined to have a relationship with me or less inclined to have a relationship?
Well, certainly more inclined. Good answer.
I mean, what if we all did that? Not just like on Shabbat, but what if, I mean, Anthony, man, you text me once in a while, like right at the right times, and I'm like, man, I love that dude. You know what I mean?
That's all part of learning how to be the bride, is if we learn how to be a servant like Yeshua was a servant, okay? And then that's what's going to pull us into being the bride of Christ and being able to then reign with him in the millennials, if I'm not mistaken, okay?
Right.
The only way you can be a bride of Christ is if you learn how to be the suffering servant, if you will, like Christ was.
Yeah, when you think about, just there's one other point I want to get to.
Okay.
But no, this is a great place to park on for a while though. Yeah, if you think about like political philosophy, like as a whole, because there's all these different ideas of a system you could implement and whatever. Most political philosophies end up having someone in some kind of authority. What's the purpose of that?
Make people suffer.
That's what they think it is. And well, suffering is incidental to the concentration of power they build for themselves. But the actual purpose of doing that, the reason that anyone would agree to that kind of a system, like if there wasn't a system and, if we were all on a desert island and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Right? Right. You would put someone in charge who can best serve everyone else. That's why you do it. Right? Now what happens is people take advantage of that situation because they're selfish and prideful, and they see that, oh, well, I can use this not to spread resources, but to get resources. Well, what a great deal this is, and everyone will love me while I do it.
Somehow I end up with an oil business, and
yeah, and it just so happened, boy, I just keep getting elected over and over and over. It's crazy, but But yeah.
How I have no opponents.
Unanimous. It's amazing. But yeah.
Pay no attention to the tanks.
No, pay no attention to the umbrellas.
But yeah. So yeah. But yeah. So in just this political sense, that's why Yeshua is qualified to be the king, because he's the best one.
Yeah.
He gave everything for us.
Right.
So who else would we want to be the king?
Right, right, that's good.
So, and there's, so, yeah, I don't want to cut anybody off if anyone has additional points to add, so, because I'm going to go onto a different topic next, so, yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, well, I'll just say, it might cause a little bit of discussion here, but I'm thinking about this body metaphor. I'm loving Jesus as the central, the figurehead, everything that comprises everything, the king. I'm thinking about what that borderline between, like the skin, like the barrier between what is me and what is not me, I'm wondering about that within this metaphor, because I'm thinking, Jesus was like, love your enemies. And so, like having the attitude of service that you pointed out, Matt, to all of us. I mean, I think that's really super clear in that metaphor in the Bible as a whole. When does that permeate the skin into people? We talk about all of the liberalisms out there, all of the people in your minds that represent them, all of the people in your lives. Mm-hmm. Now. Yeah, I don't know what we want to assert the Bible says about that barrier, and who's in the kingdom, or I don't maybe that I don't want to say it that way, and maybe somebody does, but
yeah, I think I know exactly what you're saying. You're talking about, okay, so treating people within what we consider the body in this way makes sense.
How do you treat people?
But how does that transfer to people who you do not consider part of your body?
Yeah,
right. You say, oh, no, they're not in on this thing. So
No, we're supposed to be a light and bring them in.
I love our enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is Egypt, the Egyptians that came out of Egypt with Israel, and then God says, look, there's one law for everybody. He also says that his law is light, his law is good, his law is love, it's life, all these positive, outlooks. So what does it also say? That if you do this, if you keep my law, basically you're going to be a light to the nations, and they'll come and they'll say, oh my gosh, how good is this God that you serve, that give you such good instructions? And so I think that's the perspective that we need to take. We need to be whole, everybody here, so that when people do come in and they see the light that's in us, that we're not trying to get our stuff together. We can actually help them. We can actually bring them into a system or whatever that works. If we mix, I think the potential is if we go out and we're not whole, or we welcome people in, we're not whole, it runs the risk of everything sort of crumbling in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, it may have more to do.
Yeah.
He may be talking besides just coming into here. Or
But
coming
like
to
loving your
the group,
enemies.
But as us as people, how we're walking it out, wouldn't that be an example? So that I think of it with, I've been having this discussion with my daughter and her boyfriend that she's living with, baby daddy. The mentorship thing. When you're walking a certain walk, you kind of stand out to people. You would think you would stand out. At least in my 52 years of growing up, I can observe how somebody's living.
I'm still just 12.
And they can still, and I can kind of sense this is a person of honor and integrity. And I'm seeing how they're handling whatever in their life, their struggles or problems or whatever. And it's like, that's the kind of person I want to be around. That draws me and makes me want to have what they have or want to know what they know or And so I would think if we're doing that in our lives and our walking out, that maybe that would start drawing some people to.
That's what happened in Acts 2, that's what it did.
Yeah.
They were living.
I mean, and that's probably all we can do. We can't clean other people's rooms. We gotta clean our own first and then, our
Right.
sidewalk before
And
forcing
Yeah.
things.
So to speak to your question a little more specifically, so both the Torah and the New Testament provide criteria for having people be in fellowship. And the Torah says if someone violates this, they're to be cut off from Israel, which means some people think it means to put them to death. Sometimes it might mean that, but it definitely means you boot them out of the community. Right, so, so there were standards that were necessary to receive the benefits of being in a godly community. For example, if you start killing people, you're out. Right? That's the most extreme, example and obvious one that no, we can't just let this guy keep doing what he's doing. But there's other things too that you are out. Paul talks about someone who did something very similar to what Ham did, and he says you got to get rid of this guy. This is 1 Corinthians 5. He's got to go.
Yeah.
And that's a Torah standard as well. So there is a difference between the way you do treat people inside and outside, and there are clear delineations on what separates those people from each other. Basically, if they're, the Torah says one law for you and for the stranger. Basically, if they're willing to do all this stuff, then they're with you. If they're not with you.
Yeah.
And so now that doesn't mean that you treat people who are outside like they're vermin. It doesn't mean that at all, because Yeshua said, "Love your enemies," and those people are still made in the image of God, whether they're following Him currently or not, and whether our estimation of them is that they're following Him currently or not. And so, so you can't just abuse them because they're strangers. In fact, the Torah explicitly says that.
Be patient.
Yeah, so does the
You're
New
still
Testament.
patient. You're still kind.
Yeah.
You're still.
Right, you're
Yeah,
still supposed to bless
But there's,
your
I would
enemies.
describe
Yeah.
it, so this is getting a little philosophical here, but I would describe it as like a hierarchy of duties where you don't treat everyone equally. I treat my wife and kids differently than I treat anybody else, and I should. I'm not going to take food out of my child's mouth in order to feed another child. I'm not going to do it. Is that fair? No. But they're my duty, they're my responsibility. And beyond that, I'll help take care of, people. But there's these kind of gradations there. Although outside my immediate family, it kind of wanes pretty quick. It's like everyone else is kind of equal. Beyond that, but my friends and other relatives and things, they're like, I would prioritize them over, okay, if I only have so much time and I can either help them or I can help a stranger, well, I'm going to help them first. But that doesn't mean you don't help the stranger. You do what you can. But this gets into, you're right, this brings up a much bigger discussion about how do you set those boundaries and what does the scriptures have to say about that. And just in a nutshell, the scriptures do provide these boundaries and say, this is what's makes you part of Israel, and this is what makes you outside, and this is how you should treat people. And you shouldn't treat anybody badly, but you also don't allow anybody to destroy your community.
Yeah, there are wolves.
Yes,
Right.
and you have to be
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
Wolves.
Just real quick here, and I know we're just kicking a brain. And I think it's also very important to you may value your spouse and your children higher than others, but remember to value yourself lower.
Right, that makes sense.
Blessed is he who is willing to laid his life down for his friends and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that goes back to that servant attitude.
Philippians 2:3.
Yeah, so there was...
Consider one another.
Okay, so there's one other thing. So Matt, your first question was, they're building this city, they're building this tower, they're all coming together as one. God doesn't like that. How's that different from what we're doing? And let's take it to a specific example. How's that different from what Israel did? They came together as one under King David, right? They built a city, Jerusalem, and then Solomon built a tower, not a tower, but a building that was the central focus of the whole area, and that brought everybody together, the temple. The difference is, in Bavel, why did they do this? It says, verse 4, "Come, let's build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." Solomon, after building the temple, in 1 Kings 8, verse 20, says, "And the Lord has fulfilled the promise that he made. I have succeeded my father David and have ascended the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised. I have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel."
That's so good.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because this was built to honor God. This was built to honor themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's the fundamental difference between the two things.
A different dwelling place.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right, so
Yeah.
do we have time? Should we wrap up?
Maybe. What do you got?
Well,
You have another
I think we
topic?
have a half a chapter, don't we?
no, that's it.
Oh, it's, okay.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Can we read the Haftarah real quick?
Yeah, we can do that. What is it?
I forgot.
And
I
Terry,
was doing it this morning, but I don't remember.
Terry says it's important, and Terry's going to tell us.
Where are we going?
What is it, Terry?
Isaiah 54, 1 through 55, 5.
Isaiah 54:1
Mm-hmm.
through 55:5.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. If there's no objections, I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Isaiah 54, verse 1. "Shout, O barren one, you who bore no child. Shout aloud for joy, you who did not travail. For the children of the wife forlorn shall outnumber those of the espoused, said the Lord. Enlarge the site of your tent. Extend the size of your dwelling. Do not stint. Lengthen the ropes and drive the pegs firm. For you shall spread out to the right and the left. Your offspring shall dispossess nations, and shall people the desolate towns. Fear not, you shall not be shamed. Do not cringe, you shall not be disgraced. For you shall forget the reproach of your youth, and remember no more the shame of your widowhood. For he who made you will espouse you. His name is Lord of hosts. The Holy One of Israel will redeem you. He is called God of all the earth. The Lord has called you back as a wife forlorn and forsaken. Can one cast off the wife of his youth, said your God? For a little while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. In slight anger, for a moment I hid my face from you, but with kindness everlasting I will take you back in love, said the Lord your Redeemer. For this to me is like the waters of Noah, as I swore that the waters of Noah never more would flood the earth. So I swear that I will not be angry with you or rebuke you. For the mountains may move and the hills may be shaken, but my loyalty shall never move from you, nor my covenant of friendship be shaken, said the Lord, who takes you back in love. Unhappy, storm-tossed one, uncomforted, I will lay carbuncles as your building stones, and make your foundations of sapphires. I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of precious stones, the whole encircling wall of gems. And all your children shall be disciples of the Lord, and great shall be the happiness of your children.
Amen.
You shall be established through righteousness. You shall be safe from oppression, and shall have no fear. From ruin, and it shall not come near you. Surely no harm can be done without my consent. Whoever would harm you shall fall because of you. It is I who created the smith to fan the charcoal fire and produce the tools for his work. So it is I who create the instruments of havoc. No weapon formed against you shall succeed, and every tongue that contends with you at law you shall defeat. Such is the lot of the servants of the Lord. Such is their triumph through me, declares the Lord. Through verse 5?
Yeah.
Oh, all who are thirsty, come for water. Even if you have no money, come, buy food and eat. Buy food without money, wine and milk without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, your earnings for what does not satisfy? Give heed to me, and you shall eat choice food and enjoy the richest viands. Incline your ear and come to me. Hearken, and you shall be revived. And I will make with you an everlasting covenant, the enduring loyalty promised to David. As I made him a leader of peoples, a prince and commander of peoples, so you shall summon a nation you did not know, and a nation that did not know you shall come running to you. For the sake of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, who has glorified you.
So, in the context of you won't be able to buy or sell without a mark, how cool is it that it says come
you don't
and
need
eat
to buy.
and buy, you don't need money.
That in the complete
We
verse, it
serve an
says
incredible
free.
God.
It says, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
You won't have to buy or sell, it's just there for you.
If that mark is a weapon formed against us, it's not going to prosper.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
Amen.
not. We have a faithful God.
Amen.
I love this Isaiah 55:17 or 54:17 that we quote all the time, no weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I love when I pray this out or pray this over, speak this over someone, this word that didn't come out in the translation that you read, but in the KJV it says, this is the heritage. I love when you look that word up in the Hebrew, that means this is our legal claim.
Wow, come on.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
our legal claim.
Yes.
And so that's how I pray. This is our heritage. This is my legal claim.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Come
So,
on.
yeah.
Can you pray that? Like, are we closing?
Yeah, we
probably
close. Let's
should.
go ahead.
But can we just, man, let's come together and can you lead us in a prayer for that? I guess.
You pray me back into this.
So start, you finish.
There you go.
Oh, Mark will finish, eh?
Mark will finish. Oh, that's okay. So Father, thank you for today. Thank you for what we've learned, what we've heard, and for your word that we stand on. And your word tells us in Isaiah 54:17 that no weapon that is formed against us will prosper. And that every tongue that rises against us, and that lets us know that there will be tongues that do rise against us in judgment, that we will condemn. We will condemn. And we do condemn, though. This is our heritage. It's our legal claim. We are servants of the Most High Yahweh. And this is our righteousness. And so we stand on that word, Father, and we thank you. We thank you that you cover us, you protect us, and just, yeah, we thank you. Thank you for what we've learned today, and thank you for this community that's here. I thank you for my brothers and sisters, and I just thank you for this opportunity to be in fellowship with them.
Yes.
Mark,
Thank you.
Father, thank you. Thank you for all the blessings you've given us. Thank you for your word.
Yes.
Thank you for showing us how you want us to walk. Thank you for having mercy on us, guiding us in righteousness, for giving us an example and just a perfect king to follow. We know there's going to be more judgments and a final judgment, just like the flood. Thank you for showing us that and for
Yeah.
showing us the solution, for delivering us, saving us. Just to ask you to make us more like your Son
Yes.
every day, make us
Yes,
humble,
Father.
submissive, teach us how to be servants to each other and to the world around us, and how to build things for your name and not for our own.
Yes,
Blessed be your name.
yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Can you guys ask, just in your own time and in your, during the week, just ask if you are supposed to fast? A couple of us just been talking about like fasting, and we really need direction in terms of just everything that's coming down the pipeline, And so maybe just, if God releases you to do that, do that. And we're expecting, dreams and visions and words and encouragements and different things to come from that. So, just want to encourage you guys to do that. Anything else?
Are you talking about fasting together as a community for a set period of time, or
No,
fasting on our own?
I'm just saying, yeah. I'm just saying, committing to a lifestyle fasting and expecting too.
Yeah.
Be listening. Because God has a plan for us. He's got a purpose, which is a specific plan. Schematic. There's a schematic that He's designed for us right now in this season and in the coming season.
Yeah. I recently read the Didache, and they actually found one that was, they have it in Greek, but they also found one in Hebrew somewhere along the line. But it was, they've been able to date it to 34 AD, so right around the time that, I think, what Mark was written?
That's before.
Before Mark was written.
Yeah.
But in the Didache, they talked about actually fasting twice a week, every week, all the time. And that was yeah. And so that was just kind of the lifestyle of what you did.
Is that for a day?
What?
How long is the fast? A day?
Yeah, you just fast for a day. Yeah.
It would be sunset to sunset 2 times per week.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's
Maybe not sunset to sunset.
yeah.
Yeah.